Yes, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited to share with you my top 10 books for 2022. I did a lot more experimental reading, so reading into genres that I don't typically read into, and fixing-ish my rereading problem, because for the past many years, I would literally just reread books that I've already read, and I would only read a couple of new books. However, the ratios have switched. I read the majority of new books versus rereads, and all of my top books are new reads this year. So it just goes to show how, not rereading the same books over and over again can help you discover new books that you want to reread over and over again. Now, I don't really have a top 10 order. I do have a number one favorite, but the rankings below that are kind of vague. So I'll start from the bottom and kind of work my way up. But again, there's no real order per se. Starting with The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I loved the vibes of this book and the romance, and I loved the back and forth from friends to lovers. And this was my first Emily Henry book, and I remember reading it and finishing it at 10 in the morning, sobbing my eyes out because I am such a crybaby, and it was just so heartwarming and sweet, and the whole situation was stressing me out, and I was like, oh my goodness. And my mom, at the time I was living with my parents, my mom opens the door, looks at me, sees me just sobbing at 10 in the morning. Happy tears? Sad tears? Yes! I'll leave you to it, and just kind of scurries out and closes the door. And I just love that memory attached to this book, and so I have kind of good vibes with that. So essentially, Poppy and Alex were best friends. They used to go on vacation every single year together, but then they had a bit of a falling out, and they end up reconnecting and going on another vacation in which the kind of childhood friends turns more into lovers. And I don't think that the title is an accurate description. That's my one gripe about this book, is the title makes no sense. This book did help me fall in love with Emily Henry's cute little romance books, and I can't wait to read her new one in 2023. Next, there is The Rise of Kyoshi by FCE, and I adored this book and getting to learn about how much of badass Kyoshi is and kind of her backstory in the Avatar universe. And that is something that was so fun, was seeing the animation translated to a book. Because obviously I've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that wasn't based on a book or a novel. It was just an animation and a cartoon, and an anime, but technically a cartoon. Seeing the world and the universe and getting to read about it instead of just looking at it too was so incredibly fun. Plus, already having visuals from the show in my head to then picture the things that are in this universe. So good. I have yet to actually complete the trilogy that is currently out. I really want to. I kind of read the first one and then read a bunch of other ones and then kind of forgot what happens in the first one. I plan on a reread for 2023, and then I want to continue on the series because I love the world of Avatar so much. I'm actually watching the show right now with my sister because she's never seen it, and I can't wait to return to Kyoshi's backstory and then get to eventually learn about Avatar Yang. Next is my first ever Taylor Jenkins Reid book, Malibu Rising, and I will say, I have really poor memory when it comes to all of these books. So a lot of them were what's the plot? I don't remember, but I loved the vibes. I remember loving the vibes. I read this almost a year ago, one of my first 5-star reads of January and of the new year, and I loved the writing and the atmosphere and just the petty drama of kind of the upper class and what was going on. I would 100% reread this. I don't know about next year because I do have other Taylor Jenkins Reid books I want to read, namely The Seven Husbands, because I still have not read that. Long overdue, I know. Just loved the vibes of this book, and I wish I could remember specific details. I remember the ending, the climax, and I think a lot of people had issues with how the entire book kind of led to nothing. I mean, there was an event that happened, but it wasn't some big deal. It was just you're there for the vibes and the characters. And there was no true storyline that we were really leading up to. I just loved it for the vibes. I don't know what else to say. I loved the little bit of drama between siblings, and having siblings of my own was very entertaining to see other siblings get into arguments instead of getting into arguments with my own siblings. So 10 out of 10 for the vibes. The vibes were immaculate, and Taylor Jenkins Reid just has that unique writing style that is very just poetic and can really suck you in. Next, I have the Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, which I did not expect to love this much. But it was a story that I could almost relate to in a way, and I think that really helped. Plus, I annotated the crap out of it, and when I annotate a good romance book, you know that it's gonna have to end up in my top 10. That's not necessarily true, but I don't annotate that many books, so when I do and I annotate it heavily, it's typically because I enjoyed it. Now, the Kiss Quotient is about Stella Lane, who basically hires, I don't remember his name, Michael, to be an escort and kind of like teach her how to like have sex. And just, it's so unexpected, but Helen Hoang just handles both characters in such like a respectful way, and you really feel for them. And I loved their chemistry and their eventual romance. There are some like witty banters that happen within this book, and it just makes my heart so happy. This is definitely going to be something that I reread in the future. And yeah, it was just a cute, fun romance, which sometimes that's all you need from a romance. It's just something fun. And then kind of keeping in that same vein with romances, I have The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. Now, I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. With a lot of cute romances, I go in with kind of low expectations because I'm like, okay, it's a romance. It's been done a million times before. How is this one going to be unique to what I have read? This entire arc might have already happened in a different book, but I've just never heard of it or read it. I wish I could remember character names, truly. Catalina needs a date for a wedding in Spain, and she accidentally... Does she accidentally? Or is that a different book? See, they're all blurring together because I've read quite a few romances this year, but I don't think it was an accident, but Erin Blackford essentially volunteers to be her fake date. So it has my favorite trope, which is fake dating. I love me some fake dating. They have such good banter because fake dating always has such good banter, and I loved their time in Spain with her family and the kind of eventual situations that happened. It was just such a fun time. I love the dialogue, I love the characters, and for romance books, I really have to connect with the characters to truly enjoy them, because romance books, you know what's gonna happen. Like, you know, the third act, they're gonna have a big fight, and in the fourth act, they're gonna get together. I have yet to read a romance book where that does not occur. So in order for me to enjoy it, the characters just have to be unique, or they have to just, I have to feel for them. And can I get me an Erin Blackford? Like, ooh. Next we have like an entire trilogy, which is the Poppy War. I was trying to think of like which one was my favorite and what one I should include, and then I was like, all of them. So we have all of them here. The Poppy War, I want to say is probably my favorite just because I've really enjoyed her time at the Academy, and then it led into the book. The book that hurt me the most was definitely The Dragon Republic, because the amount of betrayal that happens in this book, I mean, same with The Burning God, but The Burning God was slightly slower than The Dragon Republic. I think of the trilogy, the second book pretty much does it the strongest. Like, it's very rare that in a trilogy, the duology is a strong book as well. Typically, authors struggle with the second book, but this was so good. I have not shut up about the Poppy War, and I don't think I will. This is definitely going to get a reread, hopefully next year. It's kind of a hefty series, so I know it's going to take some time to reread. But I love the characters in this book, and especially Rin. I've never read a book that I can think of off the top of my head that was anti-hero, and she was so morally gray, and you want to root for her, but then she'll make some questionable decisions. And then the enemy will make some decisions that you're like, no, that makes sense. Why are we rooting for this character when the enemies are doing this? And it's back and forth the entire time. It is very heavy on war, and political fantasy is kind of like the genre, political fantasy. If you are someone who needs to look up trigger warnings, please do. This has some very heavy topics and very brutal descriptions, which I've talked about. I've vlogged every single one of these books, so if you want to hear and see my reactions, if you want to see me literally bawl my eyes out to The Burning God, that is on the internet for you to see. But If you have not read The Poppy War, R.F. Kuang, I love her writing. I love the amount of research that she does and her development of the characters. There are like a few plot lines that make no sense that are developed or like kept being talked about throughout the series that you're like, why? But overall, like I 5-starred every single one of these. I love them so much, and R.F. Kuang is one of my favorite authors. Yeah, if you haven't read The Poppy War, read it, because I have talked about it many a times. And then last, but like certainly not least, is The Wise Wind Sphere and my #1 favorite book, The Name of the Wind. So The Wise Wind Sphere definitely took me like 10 months. Apparently, I started reading this in February, and I finished it in December. So, 11 months? You do the math. It's excessive. I thought it was 9 months. Apparently, I started this in February, so yeah, it was a whole ordeal. It was a whole adventure throughout the entirety of 2022. It was a running gag, and I didn't mean it to be, and I finally finished it, and Patrick Rothfuss just needs to release the 3rd book. Can we make that happen, please? Not just because like I want to know what happens, but because I need more of Patrick Rothfuss's writing. I crave more writing so badly by Patrick Rothfuss. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. It's poetic. It's spectacular. His descriptions, his method of sucking you into the universe and weaving the tale of Kvothe, I don't know what I said before, Kvothe, is stunning. And The Name of the Wind is the whole reason why I fell in love with this book. Here's my tattoo for The Name of the Wind, so I definitely loved it. I got it like 3 weeks after finishing the book. The way this book is told is very interesting. So we have modern day Kvothe. He's an innkeeper, and he is telling the tale of his life and how he became the most infamous magician and how his story kind of got weaved out of proportion, essentially. But a lot of his achievements are actually like big deals about what he did. I think the thing that really made this book for me was their time at the academy. It's like a magic school, essentially, but the magic system is very unique and a little tricky to understand. I still sometimes am like, wait, huh? But it is an adult high fantasy, so I'm not surprised that I'm a little confused at times. However, I never know how to formulate thoughts on books I like. It's so easy to hark on the books that I don't like, but then the second I love a book, I'm like, listen, the vibes are immaculate, characters amazing, plot stunning, writing amazing, and then that's all you're getting. I just can't. I can't. It's so good. It is so good. I truly, like, Patrick Rothfuss is like one of my all-time favorite writers, easily. If he ever releases the 3rd book in this trilogy, his adventures and the characters that join him, and it's just so unique to anything else I've ever read. It's my favorite book of 2022. It is probably like my 2nd favorite book ever. Ranger's Apprentice is a collective unit of favorite books, but The Name of the Wind is probably 2nd favorite, and The Poppy War is probably 3rd. So I've had some amazing reading happening this year, which was very exciting because going into this year, my goal was to not reread books that I've already read. For the most part, I did succeed. Ranger's Apprentice doesn't count because Ranger's Apprentice is my favorite. I did want to include some honorable mentions, just in case you're curious about books that I really loved but didn't make the cut. The Caraval series by Stephanie Garber was one that I absolutely adored. It was so magical, and Stephanie Garber's writing was so easy and quick to read. A quick and easy read that can suck you straight into the magic is always going to be a good time for any fantasy lover. I loved the romance and the betrayal. Just all the situations that occurred in this book were just so whimsical and very fun, so I really enjoyed Caraval. Renegades is another trilogy that I thoroughly enjoyed. The first 2 books more so than the last book, but Marissa Meyer is another author that their writing is really easy to get into, and they have very strong abilities with their characters. So I don't remember her main character's name. Hold on. Nova. Nova's character was one that I really loved, and it was an anti-hero book. I kind of forgot that this was an anti-hero book. Essentially, a supervillain infiltrates the superheroes and goes undercover and such. So that was a fun narrative to read from, because typically you would get a superhero infiltrating the villains instead of vice versa. It was a unique book and very quick and easy to get through. I read the first 2 books in literally a day, and they're both like 500, 600 pages. I don't know how I did it. Don't ask me. I do not know what early 2022 Cassandra was on. I don't know how that happened. It was just a really fun and quick read that had really strong characters. And then the last book is Lore by Alexander Bracken. Now, this was not a book that was on my radar really. I stuck it on my Amazon wishlist. Darcy was kind enough to send it to me, which I thought was very sweet, and I decided to read it that same week. Oh my gosh, Lore's character I just connected to on such a level that this entire book was just so fun. Plus, it had Greek mythology, and I am a sucker for mythology. No matter what mythology, truly, like Greek, Chinese, whatever. I love a good mythological story. Essentially, if you really liked Percy Jackson and you're looking for something not at all like it, but still with Greek mythology, I think Lore is a good little gateway into more fantasy and Greek mythology. I 5-starred this book and then saw how low the rating was on Goodreads and then read through the comments, and all the reviews were accurate in their complaints, but I'm very biased when it comes to good characters. If the character is strong enough and the plot just doesn't happen, I don't care. I am there for that character and their adventures. I don't care how boring the book is. It wasn't boring per se, and I don't read a lot of standalone books, and so to read a standalone in which it was action-packed like the entire time and fast-paced was incredible. So I did 5-star this, but it didn't quite make my top 10, but it was definitely an honorable mention. Now, some of you may know that I read 2 new Ranger's Apprentice books this year, and they did not make the cut, which hurts my heart because they... You know, Ranger's Apprentice is my favorite series, and the fact that the 2 new Ranger's Apprentice books that I read this year were not my favorite is a little bit sad, but I have to mention them because it would feel weird to not mention the fact that I read Ranger's Apprentice books, because it is my entire personality. Thank you so much for sticking through this video. I really hope that I gave you some good book recs. The Name of the Wind, The Poppy War, and I hope you just enjoyed hearing my thoughts about books that I read and I don't remember at all, but I just remember loving. A big thank you to my Patreons over on Cass, our little book club. Thank you so much for supporting my channel, and thank you for watching, and if you want to see more, be sure you subscribe. I'm very excited for 2023 book content. There are some very good books coming out next year that I'm extremely excited to pick up, and comment down below, let me know your top 10 favorite books, or top 3 books, or top 5 books, or your #1 favorite, just whatever you feel like sharing. And thank you again, and I really hope to see you in the next one. Toodles!